talking with Don Schiller or D. I found myself saying D, and I thought, oh no, it's Don. No, it's D.
Yeah, I'm confusing people. My name is Dawn, but I prefer D because when I was a kid, it's a total silly thing, but when I was a kid, I had such a deep voice, and people would call me Don, and I was like, oh, I'm not a boy. I'm not a boy.
No, that's great.
So it's just,
so you hang really with the doll folks, right?
I hang with both because I have, my polymer friends, but I have
And that's
the
Sandy
doll
Camp.
friends.
You
Yeah,
go to Sandy Camp.
I go to Sandy Camp every year, and I've become really good friends with most of the people in the guild down there. And so my husband's a fencer, and a lot of times he will go to tournaments in San Diego, either to referee or to compete, and I'll just hitch a ride with him, and while he's over here fencing, I'll go spend the day with somebody from the guild and just have an art day.
Fencer. Now, is he into fantasy too?
He's always liked comic books and science fiction and fantasy. Okay. Yeah, we're both comic book geeks, and I was a fencer at one time before I developed rheumatoid, so that's how we met. We both were working at the Renaissance Fair in the fencing booth one year, and kind of like, you like comic books? Wow, you like fantasy? Hey, you're pretty cool.
And have you always been a California girl?
No, I was raised in the Midwest.
Really?
Yeah, in Illinois, in Peoria, right in the middle of the state. I came to California when I was 20.
And fairies and...
Oh, I've always loved them. Yeah. When I was little, my parents got a set of encyclopedias, and it had this set of books that went with it that was called the Children's Book of Stories or something like that. But it was like a 12 or 15 volume set, and each one was like, one was American folk tales, one was fairy tales, and it just all these wonderful stories from all over the world. And it was always the fairy stuff that I was drawn to. And so just, I went to school for graphic art. I went to college for a year, and then I ended up coming out here to go to school, and never quite got there. I got a job as an artist at a company that used to make the phone book. And that was kind of fun. I mean, you would sit all day and draw air conditioners. And but I do draw. I used to do watercolor and ink paintings, of course, of fantasy stuff. But sculpting is just so much more rewarding and enjoyable. And I'm a much better 3D artist than I am a 2D artist.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. So. Why do you say that?
I don't get perspective a lot. I have trouble with perspective, and it's neat to be able to turn your work and see the back of it, and work on the back of it too, rather than just imagine what the back of it would look like. At a company that made children's educational toys, and I was that's a cool job. You just sit around all day and design games, and then get on the computer and draw all the components of it. It's the only job that would be better than that would be to work at the Lego company as a designer. But I got downsized. I'm still waiting for him to call me back, but I got laid off in 1994, and I told Greg, Greg's my husband, I told Greg, I'm doing this stuff, and we've got the internet here that's just starting up, so why don't I just try to sell this? And lo and behold, there it goes. So yeah, I have an Etsy shop. And my book, Faymaker. I also teach online. Molly on Doll Street, she no longer owns Doll Street, but she just kept, you gotta teach, you gotta teach, you gotta teach. So I finally took a class with someone else so I could see how they did it. That's an online class, and I sat down and wrote a class, and I've been teaching online ever since, every year. Yeah, I do really well at Comic-Con. We have a blast down there. I've been attending Comic-Con since 1980, just going, and then I made friends with an art dealer that was there for a while, and we became really good friends with him, and one year he said, well, I'll give you some space in my booth if you want. Yeah.
So that's your big show. Do you do other?
I do DesignerCon in California and WonderCon in California. It just moved to Anaheim a couple years ago. DesignerCon is a smaller show. It started 3 years ago, and mostly it's lowbrow art, you know, like street art, graffiti, things like that. But it's a show that is nothing but people representing themselves. So there, it runs the gamut. There's resin toys there. There's stuff like I do. Kathy Davis works with me there. The last 2 years we've shared a booth together.
And how long will you keep this up? You said you have arthritis.
Yes, I have rheumatoid. It does, yeah.
I see you sitting cross-legged, all right.
I do a lot of yoga.
Oh, do you?
Yes, I do. Your joints gently so you get the range of motion back. I would recommend it to anybody with arthritis.
And your hands, does it affect your hands?
Yes, it does. Right now, I'm having a flare in my hands. My knuckles are just killing me because I've been doing this for 3 days straight, you know, for 8 hours a day. So I do have to take it easy. I can't work a full day of work. I have to work a couple hours and then stop and then work a couple hours. And then my studio is in a loft over our living room. I have a 100 square foot studio. So I'll just, you know, do my morning commute up the stairs and just sit down and do whatever. I do beadwork too. I teach beadwork as well, bead weaving. So I might sit down and, you know, do a sample for that and send it to Clue. I work at her store.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The Hermits have been my sellers for years
Bread
and
and
years.
butter.
Yeah, and Podgornies. People really like the little faces and the tree pods. People really like those.
Candle wicks, are they?
Candle wicks, yeah. Really, the only things that don't sell on a regular basis are the dolls because they're a high-end item. But eventually they do sell. So
how?
I use Living Doll. Yeah, I love that stuff. Ever since it came out, I've been using it. Living Doll. It's polyform. Ever since they came out with that, that's what I've been using. It moves nicely, it blends, it has a nice finish when you're done.
And lots of doll people have moved to paper clay and other kinds of air dry clay.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't appeal to you?
I do some paper clay, but you know, I like the sculpting. I like the polymer clay. For one thing, you know, it comes in colors, and I'm not that great a painter as far as acrylics and 3D stuff goes. I apply the color before the clay is baked with powder pastels, and you know.
And there are still fairies in your head?
Oh yeah, yeah. The odd fae. You know, fairies became pretty children with butterfly wings in the Victoria era. Yeah. And that's, you know, that's not fairies. Traditionally, fairies are, you know, kind of nasty and like don't piss off the fairies type of thing, you know.
Oh, so are you telling people something?
I don't know, maybe subconsciously, but it, you know, ugly faces, wrinkled faces, old faces are so much more interesting to sculpt than just a pretty little, you know, blank face. So, my favorite one, that would have to be one called Arjan. I did him several years ago. He's maybe this tall. They just have really ethereal faces. I've done 4 or 5 of them. I call them the Feta. They have really ethereal faces, and I just go nuts on the costuming. And they have horns that are made of tree branches. And my thing for them is that they find people that are kind of lost in the real world and bring them over to fairy and help them find themselves before they go back to the real world again. So I guess they're like the psychologists of the fairy world.